Section 11 of Incredible Adventures by Algernon Blackwood. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Ben Tucker. Wayfarers. I missed the train at Evian, and after infinite trouble discovered a motor that would take me, ice axe and all, to Geneva. By hurrying, the connection might be just possible. I telegraphed to Haddon to meet me at the station, and lay back comfortably, dreaming of the precipices of Haute-Savoie. We made good time. The roads were excellent, traffic of the slightest, when, crash! There was an instant's excruciating pain. The sun went out like a snuffed candle, and I fell into something as soft as a bed of flowers, and as yielding to my weight as warm water. It was very warm. There was a perfume of flowers. My eyes opened, focused vividly upon a detailed picture for a moment, then closed again. There was no context, at least none that I could recall for the scene, though familiar as home, brought nothing that I definitely remembered. Broken away from any sequence, unattached to any past, unaware even of my own identity, I simply saw this picture as a camera snaps it off from the world, a scene apart, with meaning only for those who knew the context. The warm, soft thing I lay in was a bed, big, deep, comfortable, and the perfume came from flowers that stood beside it on a little table. It was in a stately, ancient chamber with lofty ceiling and immense open fireplace of stone. Old-fashioned pictures, familiar portraits and engravings I knew intimately, hung upon the walls. The floor was bare with dignified carved furniture of oak and mahogany, huge chairs and massive cupboards, and there were latticed windows set within deep embrasures of gray stone, where clambering roses patterned the sunshine that cast their moving shadows on the polished boards. With the perfume of the flowers there mingled too that delicate, elusive odor of age, of wood, of musty tapestries in spacious halls and corridors, and of chambers long unopened to the sun and air. By the door that stood ajar far away at the end of the room, very far away it seemed, an old lady wearing a little cap of silk embroidery was whispering to a man of stern, uncompromising figure, who, as he listened, bent down to her with a grave and even solemn face. A wide stone corridor was just visible through the crack of the open door behind her. The picture flashed and vanished. The numerous details I took in because they were well known to me already. That I could not supply the context was merely a trick of the mind, the kind of trick that dreams play. Darkness swamped vision again. I sank back into the warm, soft, comfortable bed of delicious oblivion. There was not the slightest desire to know. Sleep and soft forgetfulness were all I craved. But a little later, or was it a very great deal later, when I opened my eyes again, there was a thin trail of memory. I remembered my name and age. I remembered vaguely, as though from some unpleasant dream, that I was on the way to meet a climbing friend in the Alps of Haute-Savoie, and that there was need to hurry and be very active. Something had gone wrong, it seemed. There had been a stupid, violent disaster, pain in it somewhere, an accident. Where were my belongings? Where, for instance, was my precious ice axe? Tried old instrument on which my life and safety depended. A rush of jumbled questions poured across my mind. The effort to sort them hurt atrociously. A figure stood beside my bed. It was the same old lady I had seen a moment ago. Or was it a month ago? Even last year, perhaps. And this time she was alone. Yet, though familiar to me as my own right hand, I could not for the life of me attract her name. Searching for it brought the pain again. Instead, I asked an easier question. It seemed the most important somehow, though a feeling of shame came with it, as though I knew I was talking nonsense. My ice axe, is it safe? It should have stood any ordinary strain. It's ash. My voice failed absurdly, caught away by a whisper halfway down my throat. What was I talking about? There was vile confusion somewhere. She smiled tenderly, sweetly, as she placed her small, cool hand upon my forehead. Her touch calmed me, as it always did, and the pain retreated a little. "All your things are safe," she answered, in a voice so soft beneath the distant ceiling it was like a bird's note singing in the sky. "And you are also safe. There is no danger now. The bullet has been taken out, and all is going well. Only you must be patient, and lie very still and rest." And then she added the morsel of delicious comfort she knew quite well I waited for. Marian is near you all day long, and most of the night besides. She rarely leaves you. She is in and out all day." I stared, thirsting for more. Memory put certain pieces in their place again. I heard them click together as they joined, but they only tried to join. There were several pieces missing. They must have been lost in the disaster. The pattern was too ridiculous. "I ought to telegraph," I began, seizing at a fragment that poked its end up, then plunged out of sight again before I could read more of it. The pieces fell apart. They would not hold together without these missing fragments. Anger flamed up in me. "They're badly made," I said, with a petulance I was secretly ashamed of. "You've chosen the wrong pieces. I'm not a child to be treated—" A shock of heat tore through me, led by a point of iron with blasting pain. "Sleep, my poor dear Felix, sleep," she murmured soothingly, while her tiny hand stroked my forehead, just in time to prevent that pointed hot thing entering my heart. "Sleep again now, and a little later you shall tell me their names, and I will send on horseback quickly." "Telegraph," I tried to say, but the word went lost before I could pronounce it. It was a nonsense word, caught up from dreams. Thought fluttered and went out. "I will send," she whispered. "In the quickest possible way. You shall explain to Marian. Sleep first a little longer. Promise me to lie quite still and sleep. When you wake again, she will come to you at once." She sat down gently on the edge of the enormous bed so that I saw her outline against the window where the roses clambered to come in. She bent over me. Or was it a rose that bent in the wind across the stone embrasure? I saw her clear blue eyes. Or was it 2 raindrops upon a withered rose leaf that mirrored the summer sky? "Thank you," my voice murmured with intense relief, as everything sank away in the old-world garden seemed to enter by latticed windows. For there was a power in her way that made obedience sweet, and her little hand, besides, cushioned the attack of that cruel iron point so that I hardly felt its entrance. Before the fierce heat could reach me, darkness again put out the world. Then, after a prodigious interval, my eyes once more opened to the stately old-world chamber that I knew so well. And this time I found myself alone. In my brain was a stinging, splitting sensation, as though memory shook her pieces together with angry violence. Pieces, moreover, made of clashing metal. A degrading nausea almost vanquished me. Against my feet was a heated metal body, too heavy for me to move, and bandages were tight round my neck and the back of my head. Dimly it came back to me that hands had been about me hours ago, soft, ministering hands that I loved. Their perfume lingered still. Faces and names fled in swift procession past me, yet without making any attempt to bid them stay. I asked myself no questions. Efforts of any sort was utterly beyond me. I lay and watched and waited, helpless and strangely weak. 1 or 2 things alone were clear. They came, too, without the effort to think them. There had been a disaster. They had carried me into the nearest house, and the mountain heights, so keenly longed for, were suddenly denied me. I was being cared for by kind people somewhere, far from the world's highest routes. They were familiar people, yet for the moment I had lost the name. But it was the bitterness of losing my holiday climbing that chiefly savaged me, so that strong desire returned upon itself unfulfilled. And knowing the danger of frustrated yearnings and the curious states of mind they may engender, my tumbling brain registered a decision automatically. "Keep careful watch upon yourself," it whispered, for I saw the peaks that towered above the world and felt the wind rise from the hidden valleys. The perfume of lonely ridges came to me, and I saw the snow against the blue-black sky. Yet I could not reach them. I lay instead broken and useless upon my back in a soft, deep, comfortable bed, and I loathed the thought. A dull and evil fury rose within me. Where was Haddon? He would get me out of it if anyone could. And where was my dear old trusted ice axe? Above all, who were these gentle old-world people who cared for me? And with this last thought came some fairy touch of sweetness, so delicious that I was conscious of sudden resignation, more even of delight and joy. This joy and anger ran races for possession of my mind, and I knew not which to follow. Both seemed real and both seemed true. The cruel confusion was an added torture. Two sets of places and people seemed to mingle. "Keep a careful watch upon yourself," repeated the automatic caution. Then with returning blissful darkness came another thing, a tiny point of wonder where light entered in. I thought of a woman. It was a vehement, commanding thought. And though at first it was very close and real, as much of today as Haddon and my precious ice axe, the next second it was leagues away in another world somewhere. Yet before the confusion twisted it all askew, I knew her. I remembered clearly, even where she lived, that I knew her husband, too, had stayed with them in Scotland. Yes, in Scotland. Yet no word in this life had ever crossed my lips, for she was not free to come. Neither of us, with eyes or lips or gesture, had ever betrayed a hint to the other of our deeply hidden secret. And although for me she was the woman, my great yearning, long, long ago it was, in early youth, had been sternly put aside and buried with all the vigor nature gave me. Her husband was my friend as well. Only now the shock had somehow strained the prison bars, and the yearning escaped for a moment full-fledged and vehement with passion long denied. The inhibition was destroyed. The knowledge swept deliciously upon me that we had the right to be together, because we always were together. I had the right to ask for her. My mind was certainly a mere field of confused, ungoverned images. No thinking was possible, for it hurt too vilely. But this one memory stood out with violence. I distinctly remember that I called to her to come, and that she had the right to come because my need was so peremptory. To the one most loved of all this life had brought me, yet to whom I had never spoken, because she was in another's keeping, I called for help, and called, I verily believe, aloud, "Please come!" Then close upon its heels the automatic warning again, "Keep close watch upon yourself." It was as though one great yearning had loosed the other that was even greater and had set it free. Disappearing consciousness then followed the cry for an incalculable distance. Down into subterraneans within myself that were positively frightening it plunged away. But the cry was real. The yearning appeal held authority in it as of command. Love gave the right, supplied the power as well. For it seemed to me a tiny answer came, but from so far away that it was scarcely audible, and names were nowhere in it, either an answer or appeal. "I am always here. I have never, never left you." The unconsciousness that followed was not complete, apparently. There was a memory of effort in it, of struggle, and, as it were, of searching. Someone was trying to get at me. I tossed in a troubled sea upon a piece of wreckage that another swimmer also fought to reach. Huge waves of transparent green now brought this figure nearer, now concealed it, but it came steadily on, holding out a rope. My exhaustion was too great for me to respond, yet this swimmer swept up nearer, brought by enormous rollers that threatened to engulf us both. The rope was for my safety, too. I saw hands outstretched. In the deep water I saw the outline of the body, and once I even saw the face. But for a second merely. The wave that bore it crashed with a horrible roar that smothered us both and swept me from my piece of wreckage. In the violent flood of water the rope whipped against my feeble hands. I grasped it. A sense of divine security at once came over me, an intolerable sweetness of utter bliss and comfort, then blackness and suffocation as of the grave. The white-hot point of iron struck me. It beat audibly against my heart. I heard the knocking. The pain brought me up to the surface, and the knocking of my dreams was in reality a knocking on the door. Someone was gently tapping. Such was the confusion of images in my pain-racked mind that I expected to see the old lady enter, bringing ropes and ice-axes, and followed by Haddon, my mountaineering friend, for I thought that I had fallen down a deep crevasse and had waited hours for help in the cold, blue darkness of the ice. I was too weak to answer, and the knocking, for that matter, was not repeated. I did not even hear the opening of the door, so softly did she move into the room. I only knew that before I actually saw her, this wave of intolerable sweetness drenched me once again with bliss and peace and comfort. My pain retreated, and I closed my eyes knowing I should feel that cool and soothing hand upon my head. The same minute I did feel it. There was a perfume of old gardens in the air. I opened my eyes to look the gratitude I could not utter, and saw close against me, not the old lady, but the young and lovely face my worship had long made familiar. With lips that smiled their yearnings and eyes of brown that held tears of sympathy, she sat down beside me on the bed. The warmth and fragrance of her atmosphere enveloped me. I sank away into a garden where spring melts magically into summer. Her arms were round my neck. Her face dropped down so that I felt her hair upon my cheek and eyes. And then, whispering my name twice over, she kissed me on the lips. "Marion," I murmured. "Hush. Mother sends you this," she answered softly. "You are to take it all. She made it with her own hands, but I bring it to you. You must be quite obedient, please." She tried to rise, but I held her against my breast. "Kiss me again, and I'll promise obedience always," I strove to say. But my voice refused so long a sentence, and anyhow her lips were on my own before I could have finished it. Slowly, very carefully, she disentangled herself, and my arms sank back upon the coverlet. I sighed in happiness. A moment longer she stood beside my bed, gazing down with love and deep anxiety into my face. "And when all is eaten, all, mind, all," she smiled, "you are to sleep until the doctor comes this afternoon. You are much better. Soon you shall get up. Only remember," shaking her finger with a sweet pretense of looking stern, "I shall exact complete obedience. You must yield your will utterly to mine. You are in my heart, and my heart must be kept very warm and happy." Her eyes were tender as her mother's, and I loved the authority and strength that were so real in her. I remembered how it was the strength that had sealed the contract her beauty first drew up for me to sign. She bent down once more to arrange my pillows. "What happened to the motor?" I asked hesitatingly, for my thoughts would not regulate themselves. The mind pretended such incongruous fragments. "The what?" she asked, evidently puzzled. The word seemed strange to her. "What is that?" she repeated, anxiety in her eyes. I made an effort to tell her, but I could not. Explanation was suddenly impossible. The whole idea dived away out of sight. It utterly evaded me. I had again invented a word that was without meaning. I was talking nonsense. In its place my dream came up. I tried to tell her how I had dreamed of climbing dangerous heights with a stranger, and had spoken another language with him than my own. English, was it? At any rate, not my native French. "Darling," she whispered close into my ear, "the bad dreams will not come back. You are safe here, quite safe." She put her little hand like a flower on my forehead and drew it softly down the cheek. "Your wound is already healing. They took the bullet out 4 days ago." "I've got it," she added with a touch of shy embarrassment, and kissed me tenderly upon my eyes. "How long have you been away from me?" I asked, feeling exhaustion coming back. "Never once for more than 10 minutes," was the reply. "I watched with you all night. Only this morning, while Mother took my place, I slept a little. But hush," she said with dear authority again. "You are not to talk so much. You must eat what I have brought. Then sleep again. You must rest and sleep. Goodbye, goodbye, my love. I shall come back in an hour, and I shall always be within reach of your dear voice." Her tall, slim figure, dressed in the gray I loved, crossed silently to the door. She gave me one more look. There was all the tenderness of passionate love in it, and then was gone. I followed instructions meekly, and when a delicious sleep stole over me soon afterwards, I had forgotten utterly the ugly dream that I was climbing dangerous heights with another man. Forgotten as well everything else, except that it seemed so many days since my love had come to me, and that my bullet wound would after all be healed in time for our wedding on the day so long, so eagerly waited for. And when several hours later her mother came in with the doctor, his face less grave and solemn this time, the news that I might get up next day and lie a little in the garden did more to heal me than 1,000 bandages or twice that quantity of medical instructions. I watched them as they stood a moment by the open door. They went out very slowly together, speaking in whispers. But the only thing I caught was the mother's voice, talking brokenly of the great wars. Napoleon, the doctor was saying in a low, hushed tone, was in full retreat from Moscow, though the news had only just come through. They passed into the corridor then, and there was a sound of weeping as the old lady murmured something about her son and the cruelty of heaven. "Both will be taken from me," she was sobbing softly, while he stooped to comfort her. "One in marriage and the other in death." They closed the door then, and I heard no more. 1. Convalescence seemed to follow very quickly then, for I was utterly obedient as I had promised, and never spoke of what could excite me to my own detriment, the wars and my own unfortunate part in them. We talked instead of our love, our already too long engagement, and of the sweet dream of happiness that life held waiting for us in the future. And indeed I was sufficiently weary of the world to prefer repose to much activity, for my body was almost incessantly in pain, and this old garden where we lay between high walls of stone, aloof from the busy world and very peaceful, was far more to my taste just then than wars and fighting. The orchards were in blossom, and the winds of spring showered their rain of petals upon the long new grass. We lay, half in sunshine, half in shade, beneath the poplars that lined the avenue towards the lake. And behind us rose the ancient gray stone towers where the jackdaws nested in the ivy, and the pigeons cooed and fluttered from the woods beyond. There was loveliness everywhere, but there was sadness too, for though we both knew that the wars had taken her brother whence there is no return, and that only her aged, failing mother's life stood between ourselves and the stately property, there hid a sadness yet deeper than either of these thoughts in both our hearts. And it was, I think, the sadness that comes with spring. For spring, with her lavish, short-lived promises of eternal beauty, is ever a symbol of passing human happiness, incomplete and always unfulfilled. Promises made on earth are playthings, after all, for children. Even while we make them so solemnly, we seem to know they are not meant to hold. They are made, as spring is made, with a glory of soft, radiant blossoms that pass away before there is time to realize them. And yet they come again with the return of spring as unashamed and glorious as if time had utterly forgotten. And this sadness was in her too. I mean, it was part of her, and she was part of it. Not that our love could change to pass or die, but that its sweet, so long desired accomplishment must hold away, and like the spring must melt and vanish before it had been fully known. I did not speak of it. I well understood that the depression of a broken body can influence the spirit with its poisonous melancholy. But it must have betrayed itself in my words and gestures, even in my manner too. At any rate, she was aware of it. I think, if truth be told, she felt it too. It seemed so painfully inevitable. My recovery, meanwhile, was rapid, and from spending an hour or two in the garden, I soon came to spend the entire day. For the spring came on with a rush, and the warmth increased deliciously. While the cuckoos called to one another in the great beech woods behind the chateau, we sat and talked and sometimes had our simple meals or coffee there together, and I particularly recall the occasion when solid food was first permitted me, and she gave me a delicate young bondel, fresh caught that very morning in the lake. There were leaves of sweet, crisp lettuce with it, and she picked the bones out for me with her own white hands. The day was radiant, with a sky of cloudless blue. Soft airs stirred the poplar crests. The little waves fell on the pebbly beach not 50 meters away, and the orchard floor was carpeted with flowers that seemed to have caught from heaven's stars the patterns of their yellow blossoms. The bees droned peacefully among the fruit trees. The air was full of musical, deep hummings. My former vigor stirred delightfully in my blood, and I knew no pain, beyond occasional dull twinges in the head that came with a rush of temporary darkness over my mind. The scar was healed, however, and the hair had grown over it again. This temporary darkness alarmed her more than it alarmed me. There were grave complications, apparently, that I did not know of. But the deep-lying sadness in me seemed independent of the glorious weather, due to causes so intangible, so far off that I never could dispel them by arguing them away. For I could not discover what they actually were. There was a vague, distressing sense of restlessness that I ought to have been elsewhere and otherwise, that we were together for a few days only, and that these few days I had snatched unlawfully from stern imperative duties. These duties were immediate but neglected. In a sense I had no right to this springtide of bliss her presence brought me. I was playing truant somehow, somewhere. It was not my absence from the regiment, that I know. It was infinitely deeper, set to some enormous scale that vaguely frightened me, while it deepened the sweetness of the stolen joy. Like a child, I sought to pin the sunny hours against the sky and make them stay. They passed with such a mocking swiftness, snatched momentarily from some big oblivion. The twilights swallowed our days together before they had been properly tasted, and on looking back, each afternoon of happiness seemed to have been a mere moment in a flying dream. And I must have somehow betrayed the aching mood, for Marion turned of a sudden and gazed into my face with yearning and anxiety in the sweet brown eyes. "What is it, dearest?" I asked, "and why do your eyes bring questions?" "You sighed," she answered, smiling a little sadly, "and sighed so deeply. You are in pain again. The darkness, perhaps, is over you?" And her hand stole out to meet my own. "You are in pain?" "Not physical pain," I said, "and not the darkness either. I see you clearly," and would have told her more as I carried her soft fingers to my lips, had I not divined from the expression in her eyes that she read my heart and knew all my strange, mysterious forebodings in herself. "I know," she whispered before I could find speech, "for I feel it too. It is the shadow of separation that oppresses you, yet of no common, measurable separation you can understand. Is it not that?" Leaning over then, I took her close into my arms, since words in that moment were mere foolishness. I held her so that she could not get away. But even while I did so, it was like trying to hold the spring or fasten the flying hour with a fierce desire. All slipped from me, and my arms caught at the sunshine and the wind. "We have both felt it all these weeks," she said bravely, as soon as I had released her, "and we both have struggled to conceal it. But now—" She hesitated for a second, and with so exquisite a tenderness that I would have caught her to me again, but for my anxiety to hear her further words. "Now that you are well, we may speak plainly to each other, and so lessen our pain by sharing it." And then she added, still more softly, "You feel there is something that shall take you from me, yet what it is you cannot discover nor divine. Tell me, Felix, all your thought, that I in turn may tell you mine." Her voice floated about me in the sunny air. I stared at her, striving to focus the dear face more clearly for my sight. A shower of apple blossoms fell about us, and her words seemed floating past me like those passing petals of white. They drifted away. I followed them with difficulty and confusion. With the wind, I fancied, a veil of indefinable change slipped across her face and eyes. "Yet nothing that could alter feeling," I answered, for she had expressed my own thought completely. "Nor anything that either of us can control, only, perhaps, that everything must fade and pass away, just as this glory of the spring must fade and pass away." "Yet leaving its sweetness in us," she caught me up passionately, "and to come again, my beloved, to come again in every subsequent life, each time with an added sweetness in it too." Her little face showed suddenly the courage of a lion in its eyes. Her heart was ever braver than my own, a vigorous, fighting soul. She spoke of lives. I prattled of days and hours merely. A touch of shame stole over me, but that delicate, swift change in her spread too. With a thrill of ominous warning, I noticed how it rose and grew about her. From within onwards it seemed to pass like a shadow of great blue distance. Shadow was somewhere in it, so that she dimmed a little before my very eyes. The dreadful yearning searched and shook me, for I could not understand it, try as I would. She seemed going from me, drifting like her words, and like the apple blossoms. "But when we shall no longer be here to know it," I made answer quickly, yet as calmly as I could, "and when we shall have passed to some other place, to other conditions, where we shall not recognize the joy and wonder, when barriers of mist shall have rolled between us, our love and passion so made over that we shall not know each other." The words rushed out feverishly, half beyond control, "and perhaps shall not even dare to speak to each other of our deep desire." I broke off abruptly, conscious that I was speaking out of some unfamiliar place, where I floundered, helpless among strange conditions. I was saying things I hardly understood myself. Her bigger, deeper mood spoke through me, perhaps. Her darling face came back again. She moved close within reach once more. "Hush, hush," she whispered, terror and love both battling in her eyes. "It is the truth, perhaps, but you must not say such things. To speak them brings them closer. A chain is about our hearts, a chain of fashioning lives without number, but do not seek to draw upon it with anxiety or fear. To do so can only cause the pain of wrong entanglement, and interrupt the natural running of the iron links." And she placed her hand swiftly upon my mouth, as though divining that the bleak attack of anguish was again upon me with its throbbing rush of darkness. But for once I was disobedient and resisted. The physical pain, I realized vividly, was linked closely with this spiritual torture. One caused the other somehow. The disordered brain received, though brokenly, some hints of darker and unusual knowledge. It had stammered forth in me, but through her it flowed easily and clear. I saw the change move more swiftly than across her face. Some ancient look passed into both her eyes. And it was inevitable. I must speak out, regardless of mere bodily well-being. "We shall have to face them someday," I cried, although the effort hurt abominably. "Then why now?" And I drew her hand down and kissed it passionately, over and over again. "We are not children, to hide our faces among shadows and pretend we are invisible. At least we have the present, the moment that is here and now. We stand side by side in the heart of this deep spring day. This sunshine and these flowers, this wind across the lake, this sky of blue and this singing of the birds, all are ours now. Let us use the moment that time gives, and so strengthen the chain you speak of, that shall bring us again together, times without number. We shall then perhaps remember. Oh, my heart, think what this would mean, to remember." Exhaustion caught me, and I sank back among my cushions, but Marian rose up suddenly and stood beside me, and as she did so, another sky dropped softly down upon us both, and I smelt again the incense of old gardens that brought long-forgotten perfumes, incredibly sweet, but with it an ache of far-off, passionate remembrance that was pain. This great ache of distance swept over me like a wave. I know not what grand change then was wrought upon her beauty, so that I saw her defiant and erect, commanding fate because she understood it. She towered over me, but it was her soul that towered. The rush of internal darkness in me blotted out all else. The familiar, present sky grew dim. The sunshine faded. The lake and flowers and poplars dipped away. Conditions 1,000 times more vivid took their place. She stood out, clear and shining in the glory of an undressed soul, brave and confident with an eternal love that separation strengthened but could never change. The deep sadness I abruptly realized was very little removed from joy, because somehow it was the condition of joy. I could not explain it more than that. And her voice, when she spoke, was firm with a note of steel in it, intense yet devoid of the wasting anger that passion brings. She was determined beyond death itself, upon a foundation sure and lasting as the stars. The heart in her was calm because she knew. She was magnificent. "We are together, always," she said, her voice rich with the knowledge of some unfathomable experience. "For separation is temporary merely, forging new links in the ancient chains of lives that binds our hearts eternally together." She looked like one who had conquered the adversity time brings by accepting it. "You speak of the present as though our souls were already fitted now to bid it stay, needing no further fashioning. Looking only to the future, you forget our ample past that has made us what we are. Yet our past is here and now, beside us at this very moment. Into the hollow cups of weeks and months, of years and centuries, time pours its flood beneath our eyes. Time is our schoolroom. Are you so soon afraid? Does not separation achieve that which companionship never could accomplish? And how shall we dare eternity together if we cannot be strong in separation first?" I listened while a flood of memories broke up through film upon film and layer upon layer that had long covered them. "This present that we seem to hold between our hands," she went on in that earnest, distant voice, "is our moment of sweet remembrance that you speak of renewal perhaps, too, of reconciliation, a fleeting instant when we may kiss again and say good-bye, but with strengthened hope and courage revived. But we may not stay together finally. We cannot, until long discipline and pain shall have perfected sympathy, and schooled our love by searching, difficult tests, that it may last forever. I stretched my arms out dumbly to take her in. Her face shone down upon me, bathed in an older, fiercer sunlight. The change in her seemed in an instant, then complete. Some big soft wind blew both of us 10,000 miles away. The centuries gathered us back together. "Look rather to the past," she whispered grandly, "where first we knew the sweet opening of our love. Remember, if you can, how the pain and separation have made it so worthwhile to continue, and be braver thence." She turned her eyes more fully upon my own, so that their light persuaded me utterly away with her. An immense new happiness broke over me. I listened, and with the stirrings of an ampler courage. It seemed I followed her down an interminable vista of remembrance, till I was happy with her among the flowers and fields of our earliest pre-existence. Her voice came to me with the singing of birds and the hum of summer insects. "Have you so soon forgotten," she sighed, "when we first knew together the perfume of the hanging Babylonian gardens? Or when the Hesperides were so soft to us in the dawn of the world? And do you not remember," with a little rise of passion in her voice, "the sweet plantations of Chaldea, and how we tasted the odor of many a drooping flower in the gardens of Alcinous and Adonis, when the bees of olden time picked out the honey for our eating? It is the fragrance of those first hours we knew together that still lies in our hearts today, sweetening our love to this apparent suddenness. Hence comes the full deep happiness we gather so easily today. The breast of every ancient forest is torn with storms and lightning. That's why it is so soft and full of little gardens. You have forgotten too easily the glades of Lebanon, where we whispered our earliest secrets, while the big winds drove their chariots down those earlier skies." There rose an indescribable tempest of remembrance in my heart as I strove to bring the pictures into focus. But words failed me, and the hand I eagerly stretched out to touch her own met only sunshine and the rain of apple blossoms. "The myrrh and frankincense," she continued in a sighing voice that seemed to come with the wind from invisible caverns in the sky. "The grapes and pomegranates, have they all passed from you, with the train of apes and peacocks, the tigers and the ibis, and the hordes of dark-faced slaves, and this little sun that plays so lightly here upon our woods of beech and pine? Does it bring back nothing of the old-time scorching, when the olive slopes, the figs, and ripening cornfields heard our vows and watched our love mature? Our spread encampment in the desert, do not these sands upon our little beach revive its lonely majesty for you? And have you forgotten the gleam of towers of Semiramis, or in Sardis, those strange lilies that first tempted our souls to their divine disclosure?" Conscious of a violent struggle between pain and joy, both too deep for me to understand, I rose to seize her in my arms, but the effort dimmed the flying pictures. The wind that bore her voice down the stupendous vista fled back into the caverns whence it came, and the pain caught me in a vice of agony so searching that I could not move a muscle. My tongue lay dry against my lips. I could not frame a word of any sentence. Her voice presently came back to me, but fainter, like a whisper from the stars. The light dimmed everywhere. I saw no more of the vivid, shining scenery she had summoned. A mournful dusk instead crept down upon the world she had momentarily revived. "We may not stay together," I heard her little whisper, "until long discipline shall have perfected sympathy, and schooled our love to last. For this love of ours is forever, and the pain that tries it is the furnace that fashions precious stones." Again I stretched my arms out. Her face shone a moment longer in that forgotten, fiercer sunlight, then faded very swiftly. The change like a veil passed over it. From the place of prodigious distance where she had been, she swept down towards me with such dizzy speed. As she was today, I saw her again, more and more. "Pain and separation, then, are welcome," I tried to stammer, "and we will desire them." But my thought got no further into expression than the first two words. Aching blotted out coherent utterance. She bent down very close against my face. Her fragrance was about my lips, but her voice ran off like a faint thrill of music, far, far away. I caught the final words, dying away as wind dies in high branches of a wood, and they reached me this time through the droning of bees and of waves that murmured close at hand upon the shore. For our love is of the soul, and our souls are molded in eternity. It is not yet, it is not now, our perfect consummation, nor shall our next time of meeting know it. We shall not even speak, for I shall not be free, was what I heard. She paused. You mean we shall not know each other? I cried, in an anguish of spirit that mastered the lesser physical pain. I barely caught her answer. My discipline then will be in another's keeping, yet only that I may come back to you, more perfect in the end. The bees and waves then cushioned her whisper with their humming. The trail of a deeper silence led them far away. The rush of temporary darkness passed and lifted. I opened my eyes. My love sat close beside me in the shadow of the poplars. One hand held both my own, while with the other she arranged my pillows and stroked my aching head. The world dropped back into a tiny scale once more. You have had the pain again, Marian murmured anxiously. But it is better now, it is passing. She kissed my cheek. You must come in. But I would not let her go. I held her to me with all the strength that was in me. I had it, but it's gone again. An awful darkness came with it, I whispered in the little ear that was so close against my mouth. I've been dreaming, I told her, as memory dipped away. Dreaming of you and me, together somewhere, in old gardens or forests, where the sun was... But she would not let me finish. I think in any case I could not have said more, for thought evaded me, and any language of coherent description was in the same instant beyond my power. Exhaustion came upon me, that vile, compelling nausea with it. The sun here is too strong for you, dear love, I heard her saying, and you must rest more. We have been doing too much these last few days. You must have more repose. She rose to help me move indoors. I have been unconscious, then? I asked, in the feeble whisper that was all I could manage. For a little while. You slept while I watched over you. But I was away from you. Oh, how could you let me sleep when our time together is so short? She soothed me instantly in the way she knew we both loved so. I clung to her until she released herself again. Not away from me, she smiled, for I was with you in your dreaming. Of course you were. But already I knew not exactly why I said it, nor caught the deep meaning that struggled up into my words from such unfathomable distance. Come, she added with her sweet authority again. We must go in now. Give me your arm, and I will send out for the cushions. Lean on me. I am going to put you back to bed. But I shall sleep again, I said petulantly, and we shall be separated. We shall dream together, she replied, and she helped me slowly and painfully towards the old grey walls of the chateau. 2. Half an hour later I slept deeply, peacefully upon my bed in the big stately chamber where the roses watched beside the latticed windows. And to say I dreamed again is not correct, for it can only be expressed by saying that I saw and knew. The figures round the bed were actual, and in life. Nothing could be more real than the whisper of the doctor's voice, that solemn, grave-faced man who was so tall. As he said, sternly yet brokenly to someone, "You must say goodbye, and you had better say it now." Nor could anything be more definite and sure, more charged with the actuality of living, than the figure of Marian, as she stooped over me to obey the terrible command. For I saw her face float down towards me like a star, and a shower of pale spring blossoms rained upon me with her hair. The perfume of old gardens rose about me as she slipped to her knees beside the bed and kissed my lips. So softly it was like the breath of wind from lake and orchard, and so lingeringly it was as though the blossoms lay upon my mouth and grew into flowers that she planted there. Goodbye, my love. Be brave. It is only separation. It is death, I tried to say, but could only feebly stir my lips against her own. I drew her breath of flowers into my mouth. and there came then the darkness, which is final. The voices grew louder. I heard a man struggling with an unfamiliar language. Turning restlessly, I opened my eyes. Upon a little stuffy room with white walls whereon no pictures hung. It was very hot. A woman was standing beside the bed, and the bed was very short. I stretched, and my feet kicked against the boarding at the end. "Yes, he is awake," the woman said in French. "Will you come in? The doctor said you might see him when he woke. I think he'll know you." She spoke in French. I just knew enough to understand. And of course I knew him. It was Haddon. I heard him thanking her for all her kindness as he blundered in. His French, if anything, was worse than my own. I felt inclined to laugh. I did laugh. "By Jove, old man, this is bad luck, isn't it? You've had a narrow shave. This good lady telegraphed." "Have you got my ice axe? Is it all right?" I asked. I remembered clearly the motor accident, everything. "The ice axe is right enough," he laughed, looking cheerfully at the woman. "But what about yourself? Feel bad still? Any pain, I mean?" "Oh, I feel all right," I answered, searching for the pain of broken bones, but finding none. "What happened? I was stunned, I suppose?" "Bit stunned, yes," said Haddon. "You got a nasty knock on the head, it seems. The point of the axe ran into you, or something." "Was that all?" He nodded. "But I'm afraid it's knocked our climbing on the head. Shocking bad luck, isn't it?" "I telegraphed last night," the kind woman was explaining. "But I couldn't get here till this morning," Haddon said. "The telegram didn't find me till midnight, you see." And he turned to thank the woman in his voluble, dreadful French. She kept a little pension on the shores of the lake. It was the nearest house, and they had carried me in there and got the doctor to me all within the hour. It proved slight enough apart from the shock. It was not even concussion. I had merely been stunned. Sleep had cured me, as it seemed. "Jolly little place," said Haddon as he moved me that afternoon to Geneva, whence, after a few days' rest, we went on into the Alps of Haute-Savoie. "And lucky the old body was so kind and quick. Odd, wasn't it?" He glanced at me. Something in his voice betrayed he hid another thought. I saw nothing odd in it at all, only very tiresome. "What's its name?" I asked, taking a shot at a venture. He hesitated a second. Haddon, the climber, was not skilled in the delicacies of tact. "Don't know its present name," he answered, looking away from me across the lake, "but it stands on the site of an old chateau, destroyed 100 years ago. The Chateau de Bellerive." And then I understood my old friend's absurd confusion. For Bellerive chanced also to be the name of a married woman I knew in Scotland. At least, it was her maiden name, and she was of French extraction. End of section 11. End of Incredible Adventures by Algernon Blackwood.